welcome to the fourth Ain't No Hobby podcast.
Number four.
Already on to number 4. It's gone quick. So today, Jimmy Warren, is September the 11th, 2017.
What a day.
16 years since September 11, 2001. And I have to ask you, where were you on that day? Do you remember?
Yeah. I remember I was in high school. I remember going to my second class that morning, which was, I think it was like an ag class. I had like some little piddly classes. You know, you only got like half a day.
Yeah.
I remember getting in the classroom, which was in a separate building from the main part of the high school. It's also where the mechanic classes were and the wood shop and all that. In fact, that may be what it was, wood shop. But I remember it was taught by our ag teacher. Anyway, we'd get in there, and he was a pretty wild dude, cool guy. And he started out by saying, "We're under attack." And that was the first that was the first words I heard, and I thought he was kidding. And I said, "You know, he's wild." He was also the guy that told me I'd never do anything in the music business because tour buses don't just drive and pick you up at your house.
Uh-oh. So wait, so y'all walk into class?
Yeah, so I walk in class, and he says his name was Don Shields, super cool teacher, and he's still around in my hometown. And he was kind of known for just saying wild stuff, and that's what he started out with. I remember him saying, he said, "We're under attack." And I didn't know what he was talking about, but they had a TV in there, like on a rolling cart, you know.
Yeah, right.
I remember he got it turned on, and I remember watching and thinking, "What in the world?" And I after that class, I went home.
Wow.
So this is a weird event.
So when you turned the TV on, was it the first plane or the second plane it hit?
The second plane had just hit. And I mean, right when we turned it on, the second plane had hit. And so that's when they began to say, well, it was a terrorist attack, not an accident.
Damn it.
All right, so what I was saying there before your doorbell rang, so they rolled the TV in there, and the second plane had just hit. So it was obvious that something serious was going on, but we still didn't know, you know.
Well, I mean,
I didn't know.
As soon as the second plane hit, everyone kind of
you knew it wasn't an accident. Yeah.
The first one, accident. Second one, it's like, we're under attack.
Well, I remember shortly after that, he said they had heard maybe the Pentagon plane had hit. I know the buildings hadn't collapsed yet.
Right.
I remember that. I got home before that happened. But when there was a third plane, that's when it really sunk in that that's when I decided that we're a bunch of us that could drive and we're seniors. We decided we're going to go home.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm going home.
Yeah, not that something's going to happen there, but you knew that it was a very significant time in America.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't think it would be quite like Pearl Harbor, but that's what a lot of people say.
I mean,
it was the Pearl Harbor of our lifetime.
It sure was. Like, it was almost bigger than Pearl Harbor in a way. I mean, well, obviously, Pearl Harbor, it was a long time ago before any of us were born, so we don't.
Sure, but
we don't feel it the same way.
I read a lot about Pearl Harbor, and the one thing that sticks out that I think is very similar to 9/11 is after, like before the sun went down that day, and you had a grasp of what was going on. You know, as a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I wanted to go out and get join the military and get my rifle.
Yeah, you were ready to go. A lot of people were.
Yeah, just like
a lot of people were.
World War II or Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm.
Is it the level of patriotism goes up?
Man,
you know?
it was crazy. Like right after 9/11,
because you feel like somebody didn't come in your backyard and and
it brought everyone together.
Yeah.
It kind of did.
Yeah,
it kind of did.
What were you? What do you remember?
I was a senior also. Mm-hmm. And that morning I didn't feel great, so I stayed home. I got up probably around, I guess it was probably around 8:45 or 8:50.
Yeah.
I got up, rolled into the kitchen, getting some food, turned on the TV.
Oh, so you were home all day, right?
I was home.
Wow.
So I was home by myself. I'm rolling around, just waking up, turn on the TV, and there's a plane that hit one of the trade centers.
Yeah.
Just one. and they were just, camera shot on the World Trade
Yeah.
Center. It was
Yeah.
smoking, and they thought it was a small plane at the time.
Yeah.
So I probably got a little cereal, and I'm sitting down there in front of the TV, and I'm watching.
You saw the second one?
And I see, boo, comes in, and at that moment, I knew. At that moment, I knew. I saw it happen.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and then just it all, everything went crazy from there.
Think about how the world changed from that very second. Like, I'm sure you've flown a few times before that day.
Yeah, sure.
And while airport security was there, it wasn't at all, from what I remember the few times I'd flown before that, it wasn't anything like what it was after.
No, you used to be able to go right up to where they board and deboard and wait for somebody you were picking up. You can watch them get off the plane, watch the plane pull in. But yeah, ever since then, it changed the course of world history, basically.
Yeah. It's everything. World dynamics.
Yeah.
The way you and I live our life every single day. Everything was changed. But I think the day after, after the same day when the buildings collapsed, that's when it became disturbing. Like, it wasn't disturbing when it first happened. It more like get you fired up and all.
Sure.
But then when you began, I remember seeing the images of the people running from the buildings, jumping out of the buildings.
Yeah,
Like,
very striking
that's
images.
like thinking that's right there in New York City.
It's
not
just
in
not-
Afghanistan.
It's
or
not
something.
something you could ever imagine happening. An actual. When has anyone ever thought, oh, this huge, 108-story building could just disappear?
Yeah.
They just disappeared.
Yeah. It in the skyline is obviously never the same, but that's absolutely the least of the changes that came about that very day. But it was very unique, I think, to be in school, because at the same time you're thinking, well, what am I going to, you're already thinking about college and what you're going to do as a career, and this happens, and then you think, well, maybe I just need to go
Join up.
Yeah,
well, we were that age. Like, that's
and then the
age.
recruiters, here they come. And I'm not faulting them for this, but they got some serious ammunition.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh, I remember being recruited.
Yeah.
They call you at the house
Oh yeah.
and it'd be all buddy. Oh,
Well, I
man.
came so later. So I guess it was nearly a year later because I was out of high school. The year between high school and college, I took a year off, as to find myself. Actually,
Did you go backpacking through Europe?
I should have. I just worked at Burger King, and in my hometown there, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I was probably going to go to school, but I didn't know what I was going to do. But anyhow, during that time, I wanted to go to school for potentially doing recording, and a friend of mine we'd considered Full Sail in Florida and
Sure.
different places. Since we didn't know, we both took a year off. Bunch
That's
of lazy
what's up.
bums. But during that year, the recruiter come back around, and I guess I'd scored fairly high on the what's it called, the ASVAB or something. You take
I
in
don't
high
even
school?
remember.
You take a test in high school, like I think it's called the ASVAB, or we did. It was voluntarily. I remember they came our senior year.
I don't remember.
Not long
I don't
after
remember.
9/11.
I don't remember taking any tests.
Okay, we did, and all the guys and girls who wanted to, you go. And I remember we went into the assembly hall, and they gave us the you took the, and it was like a battery test of somewhat like common knowledge of a bunch of different things, like your mechanical understanding and just different stuff.
Did this test tell you, oh, you'd be well suited to be a?
Yeah, but it didn't tell me that. It told them that, I guess. Like you didn't
get any.
Well, you might have got the
information.
results, but it was like, okay, you made a.
Okay, I see.
90.
I took
Well, what does
something that was like, I think, a career test, but I don't remember taking anything
I
that
don't
was
think
like
it was
a.
that. But
Okay.
but anyway, I guess I'd done fairly well on it, and this Marine recruiter was coming around, and Marines. That's
Yeah,
pretty
my dad
awesome.
was Marine.
yeah. So he's telling me all this awesome stuff, and he says, we got another test that you could take, and it would, I don't even remember, but it would tell you that you can do even more potential, basically.
Oh,
what he was doing was he was reeling me in.
Level 2.
Level 2, you can level up. You can level up right out the gate. And I was like, all right, well, because I'm not in school and I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I remember him coming to the house. This was, I'll add this before I tell this story. There's moments in your life, and I've had maybe 3 or 4 of them, where it was a very pivotal, you knew
this is going to go one way or another.
That's right. Or you knew like you were about to make a decision that's going to affect you forever.
Sure.
So anyhow, so he picks me up. And I remember that everything about that day. He picked me up, would get this he had like a white Dodge 4-door. I can't remember the exact name, but I can see it in my mind. And would drive like 45 minutes to an hour to, I think it was in Monroe where this was. And we'd go in this room. There's these other recruits in there too.
The best of the best.
Well, I'm not so sure about that.
It was like Will Smith and Men in Black.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't going to be officers because we weren't going. He wasn't getting us out of college.
Okay, yeah. And
I guess we could have done that, but anyhow, so we sit down in there. They issue the test, and the guy had been already like, we talked a few times before he come and got me, and there was a somewhat verbal agreement that after this, the next step would be you go and sign the papers.
Oh,
so it was getting pretty serious.
Selling a car.
It's getting pretty serious. Yeah.
If I agree to this price,
you're
going to sign those papers.
Yeah. And nobody in my family knew that I was doing this.
Oh my goodness.
Because I didn't know. Of course, my grandfather, he served in the
well,
Army.
did you realize? At what point did you realize this is getting serious?
Okay, yeah. So I'll get to that. So I'm sitting in the desk. They issue the paper, the test, and you get your answer sheet and a couple of number 2 pencils. And they said, all right, well, you got I think they said you got as much time as needed whenever you're done bringing the test up here. You said, wait, and then whenever me and another guy went, another guy from somewhere else, he picked him up on the way.
Yeah.
And you wait until when you and the guy you came with, if anybody is done, then you go, your recruiter, he'll take you out to lunch and you go back home.
Sure.
Before they actually said go, I looked at the test and thought, there's no way I'm going to attempt to pass this test. Because that's when it hit me. I don't want to do this.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. It hits you when you're sitting there with the test.
It had nothing to do with I was afraid of going to the military. Nothing. Because I like it. I'm fascinated with it. I would do it today. What scared me was this isn't like the things I want to do in my life and the plans and desires and dreams that I had a long time, which revolved around music. I knew if I did this, there was no going back.
Yeah.
And I knew if I also did well on the test or just tried my best, then I would be hooked in and I couldn't say no. I intentionally went through the test within 5. I just put A for everything. That's exactly what I did.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Because I knew I had to sabotage myself because I wasn't man enough to say no.
Yeah. Well, how old are you? 19?
I was 18 at that time.
18. Yeah. So did the recruiter who brought you see that?
Well, he didn't. So after we took the test and he turned me in, like they don't grade them right then.
Okay.
Oh, they didn't that day. And
he turned to you and said, "You've taken the first step."
Oh yeah. Oh, that's exactly what he said. He said, "Congratulations, you're getting closer." You know?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we go when we get back in the car and we're gonna go back home. We stop and eat somewhere, and then when I get back home, he gives me all these like a folder full of stuff that's not the regular pamphlets you get at the recruiting office. They're like this is where you go to sign the papers. These are some other things to think of. Dude, I went home and threw them in the trash.
Wow.
And he called me 2 different times since then,
or
after that. Not recently since then, but 2 different times after that. And I refused to answer the phone, and I never heard from him again.
I'm sure he gets that a lot. I mean,
yeah, there's no doubt. Well, but I feel like a big wuss.
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, I
don't think I would have done. I would not be here. I wouldn't be doing. I wouldn't have done the music stuff. I wouldn't have married who I mean. I don't think I'd have done any of that stuff.
Sure. Well, there's those times where
not to mention right after that, they invaded Iraq.
Of course.
Like within months. So
and they needed some men.
So eventually my turn would have come up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially at that time.
Yeah.
There's definitely those times in your life where you I don't know if you always realize
And
it at the
I don't
moment,
even think I've ever told that story.
really?
Yeah, hardly.
Yeah.
Hardly nobody knows that story.
So yeah, there's those times where you look back and go, wow, that was
one of them.
that was one of those moments where it could have gone.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a moment to where you do something, you complete a task, and you realize, wow, I didn't realize when I was doing it, but that was taking me to the next level.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where well, in my case, I guess I should say, not following through actually was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember one of those moments. I was 16. I think I was 16. I couldn't even drive yet. And I wanted to be in a band, just like you when you were in high school.
Yeah.
Want to be in a band, want to be on the road.
Yeah.
And I found there was this guy putting together some band who had, I don't know, they had a bunch of dates throughout the country. It was probably like a little regional band, but it seemed huge to me at the time because I was 16.
Yeah.
So
you got real gigs?
Yeah. So I sent him off an email. He's looking for a guitar player, and I play a little guitar. Sent him off an email. Hey man, I'm a guitar player, and he emails me back, and I was whoa. Hey, why don't you come up and try out? He lived up in Cleveland, so had my dad drive me up to Cleveland.
Oh yeah.
So we go up and we're in this basement with this guy. He's probably college age. I don't even remember now. Listen to his music. Sounds all right. He's got like a little janky home studio set up and the whole deal. And I'm like wide-eyed and never seen any recording equipment or anything. Again.
Time out.
All right.
All right. So you were telling a story about being in, before the termite man came again.
Yeah. Guess what? No termites in this house.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah. So anyway, I had my dad take me up to Cleveland to see this guy looking for guitar players for his band going to be on the road.
Big road.
Hit the big
on
road.
The big road.
And I try out for him. Play a little guitar. He plays me his songs, and it went all right, But on the way home, I was like, I just didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was. I thought I was going to do it, right? But something inside me said, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And I got so messed up to the
Did you get sick again?
At the point we got home, I get out of the car, ka-chink, just let it loose because I was so messed up about. I thought in my head, yes, but I thought in my heart,
in your gut,
in my gut,
obviously, yeah, because you,
my gut said, you ain't gonna do this,
yeah,
and I didn't do it. I didn't do it. That was one of the ones where it was the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But then there's ones where it's you do the right thing, like you said, you don't realize it at the time that you're doing something major.
Well, that's usually the way it always happens. When you're doing the good thing, you don't realize until
I'll tell you one of those.
Okay.
Back in 2007, I was graduating college, and a man named Jeremy Warren called me up and said, "Hey, you play bass? You got a bass guitar?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I got a bass. I don't really play." He's like, "Well, we need a bass player this Saturday. We need a bass player this Saturday. I'm playing with my boy Red Marlowe."
I remember these. That was back in the day
down in Alabama. I said, "I'll do it." I didn't know how to write.
Well, you missed one part. The first time I asked you to play, you turned us down.
I did because I was graduating. I think I was graduating like that week. But you called me a couple weeks later, a month later, or something.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, but I had never played bass with a band, not for anyone. Like I had poked around on a bass and I played a little guitar. So you gave me a list of 30 songs. Most of them were originals. And I went online and looked up how to write the number system, the Nashville number system, and I wrote everything out in numbers. And that's how I learned how to write numbers, how to use numbers, how to read numbers. And did all 30 songs, and was 3 days later or so playing on the back porch at a bar on the Tennessee Alabama line.
Yeah.
And I remember playing, and I barely knew what I was doing, but all these people were just dancing and drinking.
Yeah.
And there was at one point a guy had a cutout of
Oh yeah,
Jeff Gordon or somebody.
No, it was a Rusty Wallace, this old race car driver. Yeah.
This guy's got a cut out of Rusty Wallace, and he's dancing with it.
Yeah.
And he's got a beer in his hand.
I remember that.
And he sips a beer.
Yeah.
And he gives Rusty a little
He gives
bit.
Rusty a little swig, and it goes and spills everywhere. I remember that. That was awesome. I remember that.
I remember being there going, "This is what I want to do.
This is
This is what I want to do."
Yeah, as silly as it was. And then I remember a few months later, because I had been out playing with this Christian rock band, and while that was going good, the money was horrible. And I knew this other guy who was in the old gospel group.
Yeah.
And he called me and said, "Hey, it was a quartet, and we're wanting to do more Statler Brothers, Oak Ridge Boys type of thing, and we want to get a country band and do more country than gospel. Would you want to do it?" And they were going to pay me in a per show what I made in a week, which still wasn't very much.
No, it wasn't that much.
But the thing that got me was they said, "Well, we have a bus," and I was at the time riding around in a van. And then they said, "Do you know any bass players?"
Woo, yeah, you do.
And I remember saying, "Yeah, I know one guy. Here's his information," and they were going to call you because I was on the road when I called you. I was out with the Christian rock band, the Silo Prophets. Yeah,
yeah, I was at Josh Quarles' house.
Yeah, and they were going to call you and invite you over to like their rehearsal.
Yeah.
Either that day or the next day. And so I remember calling you.
You called me and said,
and I kind of told you what to say and do.
Yeah. You said he's going to call you. You tell him
this, that,
you make
and that.
this much a show,
Yeah.
and you do this, and you do this, and you do that. He said, you tell him these things. And so that's what I told him when he called, and
we both got the gig.
Got the gig. Within, it was probably a month.
That was the summer of 2007.
Yeah. Within a month of my first ever gig playing bass guitar, I was on a tour bus on the road playing bass guitar.
A lot of places around that. We did that for 2 years.
Yeah.
And we'll have to save that whole story for another podcast because that's a really good one.
Yeah, but, that's a whole podcast right there.
Yeah, it definitely is. That was a lot of.
We need to get on. We get old Brandon Lee on and our old piano player buddy from. He played with us.
We
on the
also
Monument.
should get John Tidwell to phone in when we do that one.
Oh, definitely.
To tell some stories.
Tell some good old stories.
But anyhow, yeah, that was a good time. But you know what? Let's circle back here before we're done. 9/11 again.
Yeah.
What did you say? 16 years?
It's been 16 years. It's the anniversary of today.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Man, time goes faster and faster as you get older and older.
And talking about Pearl Harbor, like there's kids in high school. Well, obviously 16. So if you're 16 years old, just got your license, big time, and
weren't even alive.
They have no idea. I mean, obviously they see it in books, but
it's different when you.
It's very different
lived it.
because right after it happens, for the first few months, if not the first year or two, but especially the first few months, the country is such. Everybody comes together. There's such a sense of patriotism and pride, and then as time goes, that obviously gets lower. And if you look at the country today,
it's
how divided everything is.
It's unbelievable
regardless.
how it pivot. There was a pivot, a hard pivot at some point.
And while I do not want anything like that to happen again, but it is a shame to think that may be what it takes at times.
I guess that makes sense. It is a weird dynamic, but it's very true. It's just odd how things have changed.
I think what those events do to the country, as well as myself, I'm sure you're this way, or everybody for the most part, is it makes you realize whatever it is that you're complaining about, or you're worried about, or you're protesting about, or whatever the case is, for the most part. And I'm not trying to discount any of the people that protest, whatever it is they protest, but it makes you realize, is that really the most important thing?
Right.
I don't want anything like that to ever happen again. But if there's a silver lining, that's it.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Well, it's like they always say, I think Reagan said it in one of his speeches. He talked about how if there was a threat from an alien world, how we'd all come together as a Earth, as as a world, we'd all come together. And it's the same idea.
It's like that documentary, Independence Day. In that documentary,
I think so.
Okay,
that happened in 1996.
So yeah,
that's the 20th anniversary of that one.
Sarah's teaching Sam all the time, and their little classroom at the house, which she calls a learning lab. And one of the things they were going over recently was Tennessee has a requirements that you got to do and certain things, and one of those is like the holidays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think there's good that there's requirements, because some people that may do homeschool may not always cover all the
you got to have some kind of curriculum.
Yeah, but anyhow, July 4th we just did that here a while back, just 2 months ago.
Sure.
And we're at the dinner table one night, and Sarah says, "Sam, tell Uppa what tell about July 4th." And I started messing with him, and I said, that's when the aliens attacked, right?
Oh, no.
Like pretending as if the movie was.
No.
Yeah, so he had no idea what I was talking about, and Sarah thought it was stupid, but
yeah, he hadn't seen Independence Day yet.
Yeah, what a classic. And I mean, I know we probably got to go, but why they did a number 2, right?
A number 2 recently.
And nobody.
I didn't watch. I mean, it didn't look good, because it's hard to recapture. It's hard to recapture a vibe, an environment, a tone.
I don't even remember the president's name, but when he stood on that Jeep and gave that Jeep, that speech.
That was the best.
That's the greatest. Like, if I ran for office, I would quote that whole thing.
That was the best speech ever.
The greatest. Whoever wrote that in Hollywood could easily be the greatest speechwriter of all time.
Yeah, that was the best speech ever. I was just thinking last night how I don't remember the first time I saw big movies like that. You're talking about Sam's.
Yeah.
One day he'll see Independence Day, but he probably won't remember when he's older the first time.
Yeah.
I don't remember the first time I saw Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then going with talking about 9/11 Pearl Harbor, I was thinking last night, I don't remember all these major things that I learned about for the first time, but the thing that I do remember learning about for the first time, I remember where I was when I learned about D-Day the first time. It was 1994, June 6, 1994.
Wow, you remember the Rain Man? You remember the date?
Well, it was the anniversary, right? So D-Day was June 6th.
Yeah.
1944.
That's right.
And so when I was 9 years old.
So that was what, 60? 50
years. It was 50 years. When I was 9 years old, they had, it was late at night. Well, probably late at night for me. It was probably like 10 o'clock or something. But on the TV, there was some big time 50-year anniversary news show, documentary about D-Day. And I remember being just glued to the TV and learning about it. It was unbelievable.
Well, let me say this about that. World War II, in my opinion, is the greatest time in our country's history, at least for my money. I'm not saying that that's fact. That's just in my own opinion. That's my favorite time that I think the country outdid itself. If that makes
Super
sense.
interesting.
And so,
yeah,
it's extremely interesting. And if you think about the things that those guys went through, so with this podcast, one of the an idea I've always had. Well, I've always wanted to do a podcast. We talked about that for a while. And one of the podcasts that I always thought would be really neat, and some people have kind of done this, but just maybe not quite to the degree that I would like to do it. So I recently read a book by a guy named Donald Stratton, I think was his name, and he was on the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And the book came out last year, right before Christmas, right after Thanksgiving. And he's obviously in his upper 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he'd never wrote a book before, never really told his story. And so when you start the book, the very beginning of it is that he's kind of giving you who he is as a person and his family and so on and so forth. And the question is asked to him, why now? Why tell your story now? You're 90 years old. Why haven't you done it before? And what he said, I still remember as being extremely profound, and is the reason that I want to do a podcast like where you interview World War II vets. Because he says every time somebody I'm paraphrasing here, but every time somebody that's well up, up in age and experienced life, and I mean, if you were alive, old enough to go fight in World War II, the things you've seen in all your years.
Oh yeah.
So he says every time somebody that's old passes away, it's almost like a library burning down.
Yeah, it's a lot.
All those things.
It's a lot of information.
And if it doesn't get out, it's toast. And
go ahead.
Well, and that's what made me think, like, how cool would it be to find these people? Because there's only a few left.
Yeah, they're going quick.
And attempt to capture their story, because not everybody wants to write books. I've got a family member of mine, a great uncle he went on like D plus 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, right there, real close.
Pretty early, yeah.
And he wrote a book for the family, which is extremely fascinating. And then I just found out this past D-Day that I have another great uncle on the other side of my family who went in on D-Day and was there until the absolute end of the war and had enough points. And you get points by the type of battles and how, savage stuff you got to go through.
Sure.
He had enough points that soon as victory was declared, he was able to come back home.
Wow.
He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was in a lot of stuff.
Battle of the Bulge.
Oh, yeah, all the way up until the surrender of Germany. And nobody knew that. Except for his son, but his son didn't even know a lot of it.
Yeah, he just didn't.
And you spend time with these people. And of course, I was a dumb kid, and I could care less. I was worried about, throwing football or chasing girls, doing something stupid.
Yeah.
And to think that I sat around these men and had an opportunity to ask them, because I'm constantly reading books on World War II, biographies and memoirs, because I just love learning about it. And I had these dudes right in front of me, and I never took advantage of it.
Yeah.
How many other people are out there that aren't telling their story? Because just like we talk about 9/11 today, as time goes on, and not that we went and fought in a war, but people aren't going to, first-hand accounts is how you remember something.
That's right. Yeah, it'll be a thing when you remember 9/11.
Yeah.
No one else.
Jeremy Sold, he remembers 9/11.
He was there that day in school. Well, he wasn't there that day, but he was alive that day, and he watched it happen. Yeah. There's gonna be a lot of that. Well, we should probably wrap it up. It's been a good hour or so. Yeah. Go ahead to ain'tnohobby.com, get you a shirt. Check out the podcast. We got some other episodes.
Yep. Give us some likes, subscribes, whatever you got to do.
That's right. Subscribe.
Yeah.
All right.
Peace out.
Peace.